Awareness is the quiet power that shapes everything you feel, everything you choose, and everything you become. Most people live on autopilot, reacting to life instead of directing it. But mindful mastery changes that. It slows the rush, sharpens the mind, and reveals the emotional patterns hidden beneath your day. This book will help you see yourself clearly, manage your emotions calmly, and move through life with intention instead of impulse. Stay with this journey, and make sure to subscribe, because once you learn to master your inner world, the outer world begins to change with it. Chapter 1. The Awakening of Self-Awareness. Self-awareness begins quietly. It doesn't arrive with noise or pressure. It begins like a soft light inside the mind, revealing things you used to overlook, showing patterns you didn't know were running your life. Most people never reach this point. They live through habits they didn't choose, reactions they didn't question, and emotions they didn't understand. But the moment awareness wakes up, everything changes. You begin to see the difference between who you truly are and who the world shaped you to be. This is the beginning of mindful mastery, the moment when you stop running on autopilot and start living with intention. Self-awareness is the foundation of every inner transformation. You cannot change what you cannot see. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. You cannot grow while remaining unconscious of yourself. Awareness is the lens through which you observe your mind, your emotions, your behaviors, your patterns, and the invisible forces guiding your life. When the lens becomes clear, so does your path. But clarity does not appear overnight. It unfolds piece by piece, moment by moment, as if the mind slowly reveals its hidden pages to the part of you that is finally ready to understand. In the early stages, awareness feels strange. You notice how often you act out of fear. You notice how quickly you judge yourself. You notice how your thoughts drift into old wounds and unhelpful narratives. You notice how your mind reacts before your heart even understands what happened. Awareness isn't always comfortable, but it is always liberating, because once you see yourself clearly, you begin to realize that your emotions are not happening to you. They are happening within you. And anything happening within you can be understood, shaped, and mastered. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your self-doubt. You are the awareness behind them, the observer, the presence, the quiet intelligence witnessing everything. This shift from identification to observation is the doorway to emotional intelligence. When you stop saying, "I am angry," and begin saying, "I am noticing anger," you separate yourself from the emotion. You reclaim power from it. You create space. And in that space, you gain control. Self-awareness teaches you to pause. Pause before reacting. Pause before speaking. Pause before assuming. That pause becomes your protection, your clarity, your source of wisdom. Most people react instantly because instant reactions feel natural. But reactions born from old wounds create the same patterns again and again. Awareness breaks the cycle. With awareness, you begin to see the link between your thoughts and your behavior. You notice how certain memories trigger the same emotional responses. You notice how certain environments shift your mood. You notice how certain people pull you into roles you no longer want to play. And as you notice these things, you begin to rise above them. Self-awareness also reveals the truth about your inner dialogue, the quiet voice that shapes your confidence, your decisions, and your sense of worth. Sometimes the voice is supportive, often it is not. Sometimes the voice belongs to you, often it belongs to the past. Awareness allows you to hear that voice without believing everything it says. You learn to challenge it, guide it, and reshape it. This is where transformation begins, not in changing the world around you, but in changing the world within you. As awareness deepens, you start noticing the emotional patterns that have dictated your life for years. Maybe you avoid conflict because you fear rejection. Maybe you overextend yourself because you crave approval. Maybe you silence your needs because you learned that expressing them leads to disappointment. Maybe you chase perfection because you fear not being enough. Awareness gently brings these patterns into the light, and once you see them, you are no longer controlled by them. Awareness does not judge. It observes, it accepts, it understands. It teaches you to hold compassion for the parts of yourself that learn to survive through old habits. Awareness shows you the difference between survival and growth. Survival keeps you safe, growth moves you forward, and self-awareness is the bridge between them. Another layer of awakening comes when you begin to notice your triggers. Everyone has triggers, moments that stir deep emotions instantly, moments that expose unresolved wounds, moments that reveal where healing is needed. Triggers feel uncomfortable, but they are powerful teachers. When you become aware of them, you begin to understand why you feel what you feel, and understanding is the first step to mastery. As awareness develops, your emotional reactions slow down. You stop taking everything personally. You stop assuming the worst. You stop reacting from insecurity. You stop fighting battles that exist only in your mind. You become more present, more stable, more open. You're in control of your inner state. Mindful mastery isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about understanding them so deeply that they lose their power to control you. With awareness, you learn to stay calm in situations that once overwhelmed you. You learn to speak with clarity instead of defensiveness. You learn to listen without preparing your response. You learn to feel emotions without being consumed by them. This is emotional intelligence in motion. Self-awareness also expands your sensitivity to the emotions of others. When you understand your own inner landscape, you begin to understand theirs as well. You sense tension before it becomes conflict. You feel sadness behind someone's silence. You see insecurity behind someone's anger. You recognize loneliness behind someone's distance. The world becomes clearer. People become easier to understand. Connections become deeper. But none of this happens until awareness is awakened. Awareness teaches you to live intentionally, to choose your response instead of reacting blindly, to choose your thoughts instead of believing them automatically, to choose your emotion instead of being overwhelmed by them. When you live with intention, every part of your life changes. Your relationships improve because you communicate from clarity. Your goals become stronger because you understand your motivations. Your decisions become wiser because they are not driven by fear. Your mind becomes calmer because you stop fighting yourself. Your identity becomes stronger because it is no longer shaped by external noise. Self-awareness is freedom. Freedom from unconscious patterns. Freedom from emotional chaos. Freedom from self-betrayal. Freedom from living a life that does not feel like your own. But with freedom comes responsibility. The responsibility to be honest with yourself, to acknowledge your weaknesses, to question your assumptions, to challenge your beliefs, to let go of the stories that limit your growth. Awareness thrives in honesty. It fades in denial. The more honestly you observe yourself, the more powerful your awareness becomes. Mindful mastery is a lifelong journey, not a destination. Awareness expands as you grow. As you experience life, you learn new layers of yourself. You uncover deeper truths, clearer insights, and stronger emotional alignment. Each moment of awareness moves you closer to the person you were always meant to become. This chapter marks your awakening, the beginning of seeing yourself with clarity, compassion, and courage. And once awareness awakens, it does not fall asleep again. You cannot go back to unconscious living. You cannot go back to reacting blindly. You cannot go back to being controlled by emotions you do not understand. From this point forward, your life becomes intentional. Your choices become conscious. Your emotions become manageable. Your mind becomes your ally. Your inner world becomes your strength. This is the awakening that sets the foundation for every chapter that follows. You are no longer walking in darkness. You are walking in awareness. And awareness is the light that guides every step toward mindful mastery. Chapter 2: The Mirror of Emotional Awareness. Emotional awareness begins where self-awareness evolves. It is the moment you stop running from your feelings and begin understanding them. Not judging, not suppressing, not reacting blindly, just understanding. Your emotions are not random. They are signals, messages, information from the deeper parts of your mind that you were never taught to decode. Most people fear their emotions because they misunderstand them. But emotional mastery does not require fearlessness. It requires honesty, the willingness to sit with a feeling instead of escaping it, the willingness to look inside without turning away. Every emotion has a purpose. Anger protects boundaries. Fear warns of danger. Sadness invites healing. Joy expands presence. Shame reveals the gap
just between who you are
and who you believe you should be. Nothing you feel is meaningless. Everything you feel is a message from your inner world trying to speak with you. When emotional awareness awakens, you begin noticing these messages long before they turn into storms. You notice the tension in your jaw before anger rises. You notice the heaviness in your chest before sadness grows. You notice the tightness in your stomach before anxiety takes over. You notice the heat in your face before frustration becomes a reaction. Your body speaks before your mind understands. Emotional awareness teaches you to listen. Most emotional reactions don't start in the mind. They start in the body. A subtle shift, a tightening, a tremor of discomfort, a spark of stress. These sensations are emotional signal waiting for acknowledgement. Before you can master your emotions, you must learn to feel them fully. Feeling is not weakness. Feeling is perception. Feeling is data. Feeling is wisdom. When you avoid an emotion, it grows. When you suppress an emotion, it becomes heavier. When you deny an emotion, it finds another way to express itself through irritation, through withdrawal, through tension, through silence, through reckless decisions, through habits that numb instead of heal. Awareness breaks this cycle, because once you see an emotion clearly, it loses its power to control you. Emotional mastery is not about controlling emotions, it's about understanding them, so they can guide you without overwhelming you. Every emotion carries a story. Sometimes the story is old. Sometimes it belongs to a wound that never had a safe place to heal. Sometimes it comes from childhood conditioning, from memories you don't consciously remember, from lessons you learned before you could speak. When strong emotions appear, they are not random explosions. They are echoes, echoes of unmet needs, echoes of forgotten pains, echoes of old beliefs that still influence your present identity. Emotional awareness encourages you to follow the echo back to its source and understand it. Once understood, the echo softens. Once processed, the burden lightens. Once felt fully, the emotion completes its cycle and releases itself. You stop carrying what the past taught you to hold. Awareness also teaches you to separate your primary emotions from your secondary emotions. Primary emotions are immediate, natural responses. Fear when something feels unsafe, sadness when something hurts, anger when something is unfair, joy when something aligns with your heart. Secondary emotions are reactions to how you feel about your emotions. Shame for feeling afraid, guilt for feeling angry, frustration for feeling sad, discomfort for feeling joy, because you fear losing it. Most emotional suffering comes from secondary emotions, not primary ones. When you learn to identify the primary emotion, you strip away the additional layers of pain and return to clarity. Awareness becomes a mirror, reflecting your emotional truth, without distortion. Sometimes the mirror shows strength. Sometimes the mirror shows wounds. Sometimes the mirror shows patterns that have lived in the shadows for years. This mirror is not always easy to face, but emotional maturity begins the moment you choose truth over avoidance. The goal of emotional awareness is not perfection, it is alignment. When your inner state matches your outer behavior, you become emotionally congruent. People feel safe around congruent individual because nothing feels hidden, nothing feels inconsistent, nothing feels unpredictable. Your presence becomes stable, reliable, authentic. When you hide your emotions, people sense the disconnection. When you deny your emotions, your energy becomes unstable. When you pretend to be fine, your silence speaks louder than your words. Emotional awareness heals this disconnection. It gives you permission to be human, to feel without shame, to express without fear, to exist without emotional distortion. But awareness alone is not enough. You must learn to name your emotions. Naming an emotion is one of the most powerful acts of control. I feel angry. I feel hurt. I feel disappointed. I feel overwhelmed. I feel afraid. I feel joy. I feel grateful. Naming transforms the emotions from something chaotic into something understandable, something navigable, something you can work with. What you can name, you can manage. What you can identify, you can change. Emotional awareness also develops through mindful reflection. Instead of reacting instantly, you pause and ask gently, what am I feeling right now? What triggered this feeling? What does this emotion need from me? This inward attention builds emotional maturity over time. You learn to comfort yourself instead of collapsing. You learn to ground yourself instead of spiraling. You learn to support yourself instead of seeking rescue from others. The more aware you become, the less you depend on external validation to regulate your emotions. You stop needing people to make you feel okay. You stop expecting others to fix what lives inside you. You stop blaming the world for the storms happening in your own sky. Emotional awareness returns ownership of your inner world to you. With ownership comes strength. Emotional awareness also sharpens empathy. When you understand your own emotional language, you begin understanding the emotional language of others. You notice the cracks in their voice. You feel the hesitation in their breath. You sense the tension behind their smile. You recognize sadness even when they hide it. Empathy becomes deeper because your awareness extends beyond yourself.
This doesn't mean you absorb others' emotions.
It means you understand them without losing your grounding. Awareness brings compassions without self-sacrifice. Emotional awareness also transforms relationships. It reduces conflict because you no longer react impulsively. It deepens connection because you communicate honestly. It strengthens trust because you show emotional transparency. It invites respect because people feel safe around your stability. People respond to the emotional clarity you bring into their space. Clarity creates harmony. Unconsciousness creates friction. When emotional awareness becomes consistent, you begin seeing emotions like waves in the ocean. They rise, they fall, they come, they go. They do not define the ocean. They simply move through it. You are the ocean. Your emotions are the waves. This understanding frees you from emotional overwhelm. You don't fight the waves. You don't fear the waves. You don't drown in the waves. You allow them. You observe them. You guide them gently. The waves lose their intensity when the ocean becomes calm. This is mindful emotional mastery, the ability to remain steady even when emotions rise inside you. Awareness makes you spacious, roomy enough to hold your emotions without collapsing under them, strong enough to face them without shutting down, gentle enough to listen without judgment. Every moment of emotional awareness brings you closer to the person you want to become, someone grounded, someone present, someone emotionally wise, someone who understands their inner world and moves through life with balanced clarity. This chapter marks your deepening, the shift from self-awareness to emotional recognition, from observing your thoughts to understanding your feelings, from living unconsciously to navigating life with emotional intelligence. You are no longer running from your emotions. You are walking with them, learning from them, guiding them gently, mastering them with patience. Your emotional world is no longer a place of confusion. It is becoming a place of wisdom. And as this wisdom grows, your journey into mindful mastery moves into its next stage, where awareness becomes action and emotional understanding begins shaping the life you build. It is the steady whisper behind every decision. Your inner dialogue is the quiet voice shaping your entire emotional life. Chapter 3. Mastering the Inner Dialogue. Every doubt, every moment of courage, every moment of hesitation. Most people don't notice it, but they don't realize how much control it has. They hear the voice, their reactions, their confidence. They don't realize how deeply it influences. Mastering the inner dialogue, their identity, their emotional stability. Because the way you speak to yourself is one of the most powerful steps in mindful emotional intelligence, becomes the way you experience your world. Every reaction begins with an interpretation. Every emotion begins with a thought. Every moment of growth begins with awareness. Every fear begins with a story. Every insecurity begins with an assumption. Your inner dialogue is not random. By your memories, it is shaped by your past, by your wounds, by the way people spoke to you, by your childhood environment. That voice inside you, when your identity was still forming, may not even be your voice. It may belong to someone you no longer speak to, someone who once hurt you, someone who once doubted you, someone who once made you feel small. Yet their voice became your voice. Their words became your beliefs. Their judgments became your self-perception. Mastering the inner dialogue begins when you finally recognize thoughts are not facts, that not everything your mind says is true. Thoughts are habits. Thoughts are patterns. Thoughts are stories your brain keeps repeating, because repetition feels familiar. When you truly understand this, but familiar does not mean accurate, your world begins to shift. You stop accepting every negative thought. You stop believing every fear. You stop letting self-doubt shape your behavior. You stop allowing yesterday's voice to decide tomorrow's choices. The first step in mastering inner dialogue is noticing it, not fighting it. Awareness creates separation, not arguing with it, just noticing. Separation creates clarity. Clarity creates power. When you observe your thoughts are simply old patterns, instead of drowning in them, you realize how many thoughts. The mind loves repetition, trying to reappear. It loves familiar stories, even if they cause pain. But emotional intelligence teaches you, because familiar feels safe, to challenge the familiar when it holds you back. The second step is understanding the emotional tone of your inner voice. Is it harsh? Is it judgmental? Is it impatient? Is it fearful? Is it doubtful? Is it punishing? Is it demanding? Is it limiting? Calm? Or is it supportive? Patient? Encouraging? Open? Grounded? Strong? Understanding. Your emotional experience of your day reflects the tone of your inner dialogue. A harsh inner voice creates anxiety. A fearful inner voice creates avoidance. A doubtful inner voice creates hesitation. A judgmental inner voice creates shame. A lonely inner voice amplifies pain. But a calm inner voice creates grounded confidence. A compassionate inner voice, a balanced inner voice, creates emotional resilience, creates stability. A hopeful inner voice creates growth. A self-respecting inner voice creates strength. Your inner dialogue is the emotional parent inside you. You either learn to guide yourself with compassion and truth, the emotional patterns you inherited unconsciously, or you continue repeating. Mastering inner dialogue requires patience, because you are rewriting the emotional language of your mind, and rewriting takes time. You begin by challenging automatic thoughts. Awareness responds. When your mind says, "You always mess things up," no, that's an exaggeration born from old fear. When your mind says, "You're not enough," awareness responds. This is an inherited belief, not a truth. When your mind says, "You should be afraid," awareness responds. Fear is a signal, not a command. When your mind says, People will judge you. Awareness responds. Judgment is not danger. Presence is strength. This gentle correction starts creating new pathways in the brain. The brain changes with repetition. Old patterns weaken when they are no longer fed. New patterns strengthen when they are practiced consistently. This is how emotional rewiring begins, is recognizing your triggers. Another part of mastering inner dialogue. Certain moments activate old emotional scripts, a tone of voice, a facial expression, a memory of failure, a situation involving rejection, a moment of uncertainty, the inner judge, the inner doubter. These triggers awaken the inner critic. The goal is not to eliminate triggers. The goal is to understand them so deeply that they lose their ability, when a trigger activates your inner critic, to distort your self-perception. You breathe, you slow the reaction, you allow awareness to intervene, you speak to yourself from the voice you are building, not the voice you inherited. Patterns begin to break. Instead of reacting to it, you start responding to life. Inner dialogue also shapes emotional regulation. If your inner voice panics, your body panics. If your inner voice judges you, your confidence collapses. If your inner voice fears conflict, you avoid necessary conversations. But when your inner voice becomes wise, your emotions follow its lead. A calm inner voice calms the body. A strong inner voice strengthens your decisions. A compassionate inner voice heals emotional wounds. This is why the best emotional leaders begin by leading themselves. Your inner dialogue is your emotional leadership. Many people believe that negative inner dialogue will motivate them, but it doesn't. It weakens them. It drains them. It destroys their resilience slowly and silently. You do not become stronger by attacking yourself. You become stronger by guiding yourself. Mastering inner dialogue is not about constant positivity. It is about accurate self-talk, honest self-talk, balanced self-talk, growth-oriented self-talk, emotionally aware self-talk. You learn to tell yourself the truth without cruelty. You learn to guide yourself without punishment. You learn to motivate yourself without fear. You learn to correct yourself without shame. This alignment builds emotional maturity. To master inner dialogue, you also need mindfulness. Mindfulness creates space between thought and identity. A thought is simply a visitor. It enters the mind, and it leaves the mind. But you are the home, not the visitor. When you forget this, you confuse every visiting thought as a permanent truth. Mindfulness reminds you that thoughts pass like clouds in the sky. You are the sky, vast, spacious, unaffected. The more mindful you become, the less power your negative thoughts hold. The sky does not fear the cloud does not define the sky, and your thoughts do not define you. Mastering inner dialogue requires reparenting the mind. You become the emotional guide you never had. You build the inner voice that supports you, validates you, pushes you, and grounds you with honesty and compassion. You start speaking to yourself like someone who is worthy of care, worthy of gentleness, worthy of encouragement, worthy of understanding. This inner shift transforms your entire emotional world. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to rely on yourself. You begin to feel safe within yourself. Emotional safety is the foundation of emotional intelligence. When your inner dialogue becomes calm, your emotions become calm. When your inner dialogue becomes supportive, your self-confidence rises. When your inner dialogue becomes wise, your decisions become better. When your inner dialogue becomes intentional, your entire life changes direction. Mastering inner dialogue is not a single moment, it is a lifelong practice. But every day, you strengthen the voice that wants the best for you. And every day, you weaken the voice that once held you back. This gradual rewriting creates emotional liberation. You stop fighting yourself. You stop doubting yourself. You stop sabotaging your progress. You stop listening to the echoes of an identity that no longer represents you. You begin listening to the voice of the person you are becoming, a person with clarity, a person with strength, a person with emotional depth, a person with mindful intelligence, a person who leads their inner world with stability and compassion. This chapter marks your transformation from reacting to your thoughts to guiding them, from being controlled by your inner critic to becoming your inner leader, from emotional chaos to mindful mastery. And as you master this inner voice, your emotional intelligence expands, your awareness deepens, and your journey moves forward with a strength that rises from within. Chapter 4: Rewiring Emotional Patterns. Emotional patterns are the hidden scripts of your life. They guide how you react, how you cope, how you interpret the world. They shape your relationships, your habits, your fears, and your confidence. Most people never see these patterns clearly. They live inside them, not above them. But mindful mastery begins when you rise above the script and finally understand the emotional patterns that have silently directed your life for years. An emotional pattern is not a single reaction. It is a repeated reaction, a familiar emotional cycle that activates under certain conditions. It may feel natural, but natural does not always mean healthy. Natural often means learned. Natural often means inherited. Natural often means unexamined. Your emotional patterns come from somewhere, from your childhood, from your environment, from your past relationships, from the coping mechanisms you built to survive moments you didn't understand, from experiences that shaped your nervous system long before your mind developed the ability to question any of it. When you begin rewiring emotional patterns, you are not fixing yourself. You are freeing yourself from emotional habits you never consciously chose. Rewiring begins with recognition. Recognition opens the door to a deeper understanding of yourself. You start noticing the moment when old patterns appear, the way your stomach tightens when someone raises their voice, the way you withdraw when conflict approaches, the way you apologize even when you did nothing wrong, the way you over-explain because being misunderstood feels unsafe, the way you detach when emotions rise too quickly, the way you rush to fix others to avoid feeling your own feelings, the way you choose silence to avoid rejection, the way you pretend to be strong when what you really want is connection. These patterns are not flaws. They are emotional reflexes, protective strategies your younger self created to survive moments of discomfort or hurt. But you are no longer that child. You are no longer living in those old moments. Your life has changed. You have grown. Your strength has expanded. Yet your emotional patterns did not update themselves. Rewiring is the process of teaching your emotional world that the danger has passed, that you no longer need the same defenses, that you can respond with awareness instead of reacting with fear. It begins with presence. Presence slows the automatic reaction. It builds a pause between the trigger and the emotional surge. In that pause, you begin seeing the pattern. You begin understanding why you react the way you do. You begin recognizing that your emotions are not overreactions. They are overprotective responses built during a time when protection was necessary. Awareness softens the judgment. Compassion dissolves the shame. Understanding rewrites the narrative. You start asking, without words, what is this emotion trying to protect? What memory does this reaction belong to? What part of me learned this pattern? What need went unmet that created this response? These questions unlock the inner emotional architecture, and when the architecture becomes visible, change becomes possible. Rewiring requires safety, not external safety, but internal safety. You must teach your mind and your body that feeling emotion does not equal danger. Many emotional patterns were built around fear, fear of being judged, fear of being ignored, fear of being abandoned, fear of not being enough, fear of disappointing others, fear of losing connection, fear of losing control. Fear creates rigid patterns Fear locks the emotional system in survival mode. Fear makes old patterns feel necessary, but mindful awareness gradually turns fear into understanding. Understanding turns fear into softness. Softness turns fear into release. Rewiring also requires patience, because emotional patterns are stored in the nervous system, not just the mind. Your mind can understand the pattern, but your body may still respond as if the past is happening again. Rewiring is teaching your body a new emotional rhythm. You do this through small moments of change. When a trigger appears and you choose to breathe instead of freeze, you rewrite the pattern. When discomfort rises and you stay present, instead of shutting down, you rewrite the pattern. When fear whispers and you move gently forward, instead of stepping back, you rewrite the pattern. Every time you choose a new response, you weaken the old emotional script. You strengthen the new one. You build a new pathway. The brain rewires through repetition. What you practice becomes what you feel. What you repeat becomes what you believe. Rewiring also involves boundaries. Emotional patterns often form when your boundaries were crossed, dismissed, or punished. Reclaiming your boundaries is reclaiming your emotional autonomy. It teaches your mind that your needs matter. It teaches your nervous system that you are safe now. It teaches your emotions that they will no longer be ignored. Boundaries stabilize emotional patterns. They prevent you from slipping back into old roles that no longer align with your emotional growth. Another part of rewiring is learning emotional neutrality. Neutrality is the ability to observe your emotions without labeling them as good or bad, right or wrong. Emotions simply are. They exist to guide you, not to punish you. When you stop judging emotions, they lose their intensity. They become easier to manage. They become signals instead of storms. Neutrality gives you the emotional space to choose your response instead of collapsing into reaction. Rewiring also means releasing emotional stories that no longer represent the person you are becoming. Stories such as, "I'm not worthy," "I'm hard to love," "I'll always be abandoned," "I must stay strong all the time," "It's my job to fix everyone," "I'm not allowed to express my needs," "I don't deserve happiness," "Nothing will ever change." These stories are emotional prisons. You walk out of them by acknowledging that they were never truths, only learned beliefs. Your emotional growth does not depend on changing the past. It depends on changing the meaning you continue to attach to it. When you reinterpret your past with awareness and compassion, you free your present from the emotional weight you've been carrying for years. Rewiring also demands forgiveness, not for others, but for yourself. Forgiveness for being unaware. Forgiveness for reacting from old wounds. Forgiveness for not knowing better. Forgiveness for carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. Self-forgiveness rewires emotional identity. It softens the harsh patterns. It dissolves the emotional rigidity. It lets you grow without punishing yourself for who you used to be. The most powerful moment of emotional rewiring is when you realize you no longer need to live according to the emotional script written by your past. You can write a new one, a script grounded in awareness, a script built on self-understanding, a script guided by emotional truth, a script aligned with the person you are becoming, instead of the person you were taught to be. Rewiring emotional patterns is transformation at its deepest level. It is emotional rebirth. It is choosing presence over survival, choosing clarity over confusion, choosing growth over repetition, choosing truth over inherited belief, choosing intention over emotional reflex. This chapter marks a turning point in your journey. You are no longer controlled by patterns you didn't choose. You are becoming the conscious architect of your emotional life. Every moment of awareness, every moment of courage, every moment of mindfulness strengthens the new emotional pathways that will guide the rest of your life. You are rewriting your emotional story. You are changing your internal patterns. You are transforming your relationship with your own emotional world. And this rewiring sets the foundation for everything still to come on your journey toward mindful mastery and emotional intelligence. Emotional regulation is the heart of emotional intelligence. Chapter 5, Emotional Regulation and Inner Stability. It is the ability to stay steady when life shakes you. It is the quiet strength that allows you to feel deeply without being swept away. It is the skill that turns emotional storms. Most people believe emotional regulation means suppression, but suppression is the opposite of regulation, into manageable waves. Suppression buries emotions. Suppression breaks you. Regulation guides them. It is understanding. Regulation is not resistance. Regulation strengthens you. It is the graceful art of staying present. It is awareness. Even when your emotions rise high, to regulate your emotions, you must first accept them. Acceptance softens intensity. Intensity becomes manageable, and manageable emotions become navigable emotions. And start listening to it. When you stop fighting what you feel, inner stability begins. To feel an emotion fully without losing control of your actions. Emotional regulation is the ability, it is the discipline of guiding your internal world with calm leadership. And calm leadership does not come from perfection. It comes from practice. Is an opportunity to regulate. Every emotional trigger, every moment of emotional discomfort is a teacher, is a reminder, every surge of anxiety, that the body is reacting faster than the mind. Regulation bridges the gap. It slows the reaction and creates space for clarity. Emotional regulation begins with the body. Psychological second. The heart speeds up. Emotions are physical first. The breath shortens. The stomach contracts. The muscles tighten. The chest feels heavy. These physical responses are the emotional smoke signals that regulation needs to address. When you regulate the body, you regulate the emotion. A calm body cannot sustain a chaotic emotion. Breathing is the first regulator. Not deep breathing. Slow breath tells the nervous system, but slow breathing. Safety softens intensity, even if your mind feels threatened, that you are safe. This is emotional leadership, teaching your body. Intensity becomes clarity. Another part of regulation is grounding your attention. What your mind has not yet processed. Emotions pull attention into the storm. Regulation brings attention back to the present moment. When you ground yourself, through breath, through awareness, through observing your surroundings, you weaken the emotional spiral. Always feel safe as the present moment. Grounding returns controls control, then the emotional story. To the part of you that thinks clearly. Emotional regulation also requires awareness of emotional triggers. A trigger is not the enemy. It is a mirror. It reflects the wounds you have not yet healed, the fears you still carry, the beliefs that still limit you. When you become aware of your triggers, you stop reacting blindly. You begin responding intentionally. Regulation teaches you shift from emotional autopilot to emotional mastery. To pause before reacting. That pause is power. It interrupts the old pattern and gives you the chance to choose a better response. This pause is not weakness. It is emotional precision. People often confuse emotional regulation with emotional numbness, but numbness is disconnection. Regulation is connection with stability. Regulation allows you to feel the full emotion, without the emotion taking over your choices. It lets the emotion exist without letting it control your identity. To regulate well, you must understand the layers of your emotions. The first layer is the surface emotion, anger, sadness, fear, frustration. The second layer is the protective emotion, the emotion that rises quickly to shield you. The third layer is the core emotion, the true feeling that needs attention, the one hidden beneath the reaction. Anger may be the surface. Hurt may be the core. Fear may be the surface. Vulnerability may be the core. Regulation happens when you stop reacting to the surface and begin understanding the core. Surface emotions shout. Core emotions whisper. Regulation is listening to the whisper. When you identify the core emotion, you stop fighting the wrong battle. You begin addressing what actually matters. Inner stability emerges when you respond to your truth, not your reflex. Emotional regulation is also the ability to hold space for discomfort. Discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is emotional growth. When you hold space for an uncomfortable emotion,
you show your mind
that feelings are not threats. They are experiences. And experiences, like waves, rise and fall. No emotion remains forever. Every feeling completes its cycle when given permission to exist. And avoidance interrupts the cycle. Suppression traps the cycle. Regulation allows the cycle to complete without consuming you. Another part of emotional regulation is emotional naming. When you name an emotion, you reduce its power. I feel overwhelmed. I feel uncertain. I feel insecure. I feel disappointed. I feel hopeful. I feel tense. Naming changes the emotional experience. The emotion shifts from something chaotic to something defined, and the defined becomes manageable. Inner stability requires taking responsibility for your emotions without blaming yourself for having them. You are not weak for feeling deeply. You are human. Emotion is not a flaw. Emotion is communication. Regulation listen without collapsing. Regulation guides without suppressing. Regulation balances balance without ignoring. One of the most powerful tools of emotional regulation is emotional reframing. Reframing does not change the situation. It changes your interpretation of it. The same situation can feel unbearable or manageable depending on the story your mind tells. Reframing softens the emotional load. It shifts you from "I can't handle this," "I can handle this moment by moment," from "this is the end"
to
"this is a transition,"
from
"I'm losing control," to "I'm learning control," from "I'm overwhelmed" to "I'm adjusting." Reframing is not illusion. It is emotional accuracy. It returns your mind to a balanced interpretation instead of a fear-driven one. Regulation also involves emotional release. Some emotions need expression. Expression is not weakness. Expression is health. A regulated person expresses emotions intentionally, not destructively. They let out what the body holds without damaging themselves or others. Release prevents emotional buildup. Buildup becomes emotional pressure. Pressure becomes emotional explosion. Regulation diffuses the pressure before the explosion. Inner stability also demands self-compassion. Compassion is not softness. Compassion is strength that refuses to punish you. Chapter 6. The Art of Emotional Resilience. Emotional resilience is the strength that carries you through life's hardest moments. It is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to rise through it, to feel deeply without losing yourself, to bend without breaking, and still return to a place of balance inside. To walk through emotional storms. Most people misunderstand resilience. They think it means being unbothered. They think it means never falling apart. They think it means staying calm no matter what. But true resilience isn't hardness. It is flexibility. It is recovery that allows you to return to center. It is adaptation. It is the emotional elasticity. It is built in challenge. Again and again. Resilience is not built in comfort, not through the absence of difficulty, but through your relationship with it. Every setback you survived, every heartbreak you endure, has already strengthened you, has already shaped you. Every moment of doubt, resilience grows quietly, has already stretched your emotional capacity. Through every experience that forced you to keep moving, even when you didn't feel ready. But mindful mastery teaches you, not just through survival, to build resilience intentionally, but through awareness. Resilience begins with your mindset toward adversity. People who break easily. It is not a personal attack. Often believe that difficulty is a sign of failure. But difficulty is simply a part of life. It is not a reflection of your worth. It is not a punishment. Resilient people understand it strengthens what was once fragile. That challenge is not the end. It is an emotional training ground. It reveals what was once hidden. It sharpens what was once dull. You do not become emotionally strong. You become emotionally strong by learning from hardship, by avoiding hardship. When you stop asking, resilience grows. Why is this happening to me? And begin understanding. What is this moment teaching me? Emotional resilience is also built, instead of storing it, through your ability to process pain. Unprocessed emotions become emotional weight. Weight becomes exhaustion. Exhaustion becomes numbness. But when you allow yourself, numbness becomes disconnection. To feel the heaviness, to sit with the discomfort without running away. To acknowledge the wound, the emotion completes its cycle. It softens, it releases, it transforms. Resilience is emotional movement. It is the slow return, from chaos to calm, from heartbreak to hope, from confusion to clarity. And this movement is what keeps you alive inside, from collapse to strength. Resilience also requires self-trust. If you do not trust yourself to handle difficulty, every challenge becomes overwhelming. Fear grows, self-doubt grows, avoidance grows. But self-trust tells you, I have been through hard things before. I can get through this as well. Self-trust does not mean you know the outcome. It means you trust your ability to navigate the unknown. Many people collapse emotionally, not because life is too hard, but because they believe they are too weak. Resilience teaches you that you are stronger than you ever realized. To build resilience, you must learn to regulate your nervous system. Chaos in the body creates chaos in the mind. A deregulated system makes small problems feel catastrophic. A regulated system makes even large challenges feel navigable. Calming your breath, relaxing your muscles, grounding your energy. These practices strengthen resilience at the physiological level. When your body feels safe, your mind becomes stronger, your decisions become wiser, your emotions become clearer. Resilience is a full-body skill. Another aspect of resilience is emotional flexibility. Rigidity breaks, flexibility bends. Rigid people try to control everything. They cling to expectations. They panic when life deviates from the plan. Flexible people adapt. They shift. They adjust. They flow around obstacles instead of crashing into them. Emotional flexibility makes you stronger, not by force, but by responsiveness. Life will not always go the way you expect, but resilience ensures that you do not collapse every time life changes direction. Resilience also grows through self-awareness. When you understand your emotional patterns, your triggers, your inner dialogue, your coping habits, you become less vulnerable to emotional overwhelm. Awareness creates choice. Choice creates power. Power builds resilience. Many people become overwhelmed because they react unconsciously. They fall into old patterns without realizing it. They spiral into fear because they cannot see the root. They drown in emotions because they don't understand them. But awareness gives you clarity. Clarity reduces fear. Reduced fear increases resilience, and resilience strengthens every part of your emotional life. One of the most powerful ingredients in emotional resilience is emotional recovery. Resilient people do not avoid falling. They recover quickly when they do. They know how to rest. They know how to slow down. They know how to reconnect with themselves. They know how to regulate their emotions before the overwhelm becomes unbearable. Recovery is not a step backward. It is the process that prepares you to move forward. Without recovery, stress accumulates. Accumulation becomes burnout. Burnout becomes emotional fragility. Resilience is not endurance. Resilience is sustainable endurance. Endurance with awareness, with processing, with emotional pacing. Another part of resilience is emotional reframing. Reframing is not pretending everything is beautiful. It is looking at difficulty through a lens of growth instead of defeat. When something hurts, reframing says, "This is shaping me." When something ends, reframing says, "This is redirecting me." When something scares you, reframing says, "This is stretching me." When something challenges you, reframing says, "This is strengthening me." Reframing does not remove the pain. It gives the pain a direction. Resilience also involves releasing what you cannot control. Control is an illusion that creates emotional exhaustion. The more you cling to it, the more life pushes back. Letting go is not giving up. It is recognizing that your emotional energy. Chapter 7. The Power of Mindful Emotional Connection. We seek it in our relationships. Connection is one of the deepest human needs. In our friendships, in our conversations, in our families, and even within ourselves. But true connection does not come from proximity. It does not come from talking often. It does not come from shared history. True connection comes from presence, the emotional presence that makes another person feel seen, heard, and understood. Mindful emotional connection is not something you do. It is the energy you carry. It is something you bring into the moment when you show up with awareness, openness, and emotional clarity. They respond without understanding. Most people interact without connecting. They speak without listening. They rush through conversation as if emotions are interruptions instead of invitations. But mindful emotional connection slows everything down. It allows you to enter a space where two inner worlds meet without judgment, without pressure, without masks. This is where emotional intelligence comes alive. Mindful connection begins with deep presence. Presence is not silence. It is attention. Instead of in your thoughts, it is choosing to be fully in the moment. Instead of in your assumptions, instead of in your fears, instead of in your interpretations. The rare experience, presence gives someone a feeling valued, and value is the foundation of connection. When you are present with someone, you notice the small shift. Your awareness opens in their tone, just their expression, their breathing. You sense the emotional truth behind their words. You hear what is said, and you hear what is not said. Mindful connection is emotional listening. It is listening with your whole body, your whole attention, not just your ears. When someone feels heard deeply, their nervous system relaxes, their defenses soften, their emotional walls lower, their truth begins to surface. Only when they feel safe, people reveal themselves, and mindful connection creates safety. Is emotional attunement. The second pillar of mindful connection. Attunement means aligning your awareness with someone's emotional state. It does not mean absorbing their emotions. It means understanding them without losing yourself. Attunement is the emotional bridge that allows two inner worlds to connect without collision. When you are attuned, you notice when someone's smile is heavier than it seems. You notice when their silence is asking for support. You notice when their energy shifts, even if their words don't. Attunement deepens emotional understanding, and understanding is the heartbeat of connection. But mindful connection, without boundaries, requires boundaries as well. You lose yourself in others. You absorb their emotions. You drown in their storms. You forget your center. Boundaries protect your emotional clarity. They ensure you remain present without becoming overwhelmed. You cannot connect deeply if you lose yourself in the process. Mindful connection requires another part of mindful emotional connection, both openness and grounding, is vulnerability, not emotional flooding, not oversharing, not exposing yourself without intention. Vulnerability is the willingness to show the truth of who you are without fear of rejection. Vulnerability creates trust. Trust deepens connection. Connection creates emotional intimacy, but vulnerability is only safe when paired with awareness. You do not offer your heart to people who have not earned access to it. Mindful connection means you choose carefully who you open your inner world to. Connection becomes meaningful when it is intentional. To connect mindfully, you must first connect with yourself. Many people struggle to build deep relationship because they are disconnected internally. If you cannot sit with your own emotions, you will struggle to sit with others. If you fear your own truth, you will fear someone else's truth. If you do not understand your inner world, you cannot navigate someone else's. Mindfulness helps you reconnect to yourself. It teaches you to observe your emotions without judgment, to hold space for your experiences without shame, to accept your complexity without resistance. Self-connection is the foundation of all connection. The more you understand yourself, the easier it becomes to understand others. Emotionally intelligent connection also requires intentional communication, not over-explaining, not convincing, not trying to control how others perceive you. Intentional communication means that you express your truth with clarity, calmness, and respect. When your emotional expression matches your emotional truth, people experience you as authentic. Authenticity draws people in. It invites connection. It creates trust that words alone cannot create. In mindful connection, you learn to speak from a grounded place inside you, a place that does not seek approval or fear rejection. You speak from awareness. You speak from emotional alignment. This changes the entire tone of your interactions. People can feel when your words come from depth, not defensiveness, from presence, not fear, from understanding, not reaction. Mindful emotional connection also requires emotional generosity, the ability to offer understanding instead of judgment, to offer patience instead of pressure, to offer compassion instead of criticism. Generosity does not mean self-sacrifice. It means being emotionally present without trying to fix or control someone else. You give empathy without losing your boundaries. You offer comfort without abandoning your needs. You listen deeply without absorbing their emotional burden. This balance is rare, but it is the essence of mindful connection. Mindful connection is also built through emotional transparency. Transparency does not mean explaining everything. Chapter 8. Cultivating Mindful Compassion and Emotional Healing. Compassion is one of the most transformative emotional forces in the human experience. It softens what is hard. It brings light into places. It heals what is wounded. It reconnects what was broken. But mindful compassion, where the mind once carried only darkness, is different from simple kindness. Compassion is internal. Kindness is external. Kindness is an action. Compassion heals both others and yourself. Compassion is an awareness. Kindness comforts others without turning away. Mindful compassion begins with the willingness to see pain, but your own, not just the pain of others. This is where emotional intelligence, because they fear what will happen, meets emotional courage. Most people avoid their pain if they finally face it. They fear collapse. They fear memories resurfacing. But mindful compassion, they fear losing control over emotions they spent years suppressing, teaches you something profound. Your pain does not destroy you. Your avoidance does. Compassion opens the door to emotional healing. It allows you to sit gently with the parts of yourself that were once rejected, dismissed, criticized. Compassion says, ignored. You don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to carry this alone. You don't have to pretend you're fine. I am here with you. This inner reassurance is the beginning of healing. Because healing does not begin with fixing. Healing begins with acknowledgement, with presence, with honest emotional witnessing. Mindful compassion teaches you to approach your inner wounds with softness instead of judgment. Softness creates safety. Judgment creates shame. Shame is the emotional cage that traps countless people in cycles of self-blame and emotional abandonment. Compassion breaks that cage. Self-compassion is not indulgence. It is not weakness. It is not an excuse. It is emotional oxygen, the resource that allows you to heal without suffocating. Mindful mastery requires deep self-compassion because emotional healing is not a straight path. It is full of detours, setbacks, relapses, and moments where old patterns return unexpectedly. And without compassion, you will interpret these moments as failure. With compassion, you will interpret them as part of the process. Healing is not linear. Healing is layered. Healing is cyclical. You revisit old wounds from higher levels of awareness. Mindful compassion gives you the emotional resilience to walk through this journey without collapsing into self-blame. One of the most powerful functions of mindful compassion is emotional validation. When you validate your feelings, you accept their existence without denying or diminishing them. Validation says, "It makes sense that I feel this way. My emotions are real. My pain is real. My experience is valid." Validation does not amplify pain. It releases it. Emotions become heavier when they are dismissed. Emotions become lighter when they are acknowledged. But emotional healing requires more than compassion. It requires understanding. Understanding is the bridge between compassion and transformation. You begin exploring questions like, where did this pain begin? What memory shaped this reaction? What belief was created from this wound? What emotional habit formed because of this moment in my past? Understanding exposes the roots. And once the roots are visible, healing can reach deeper. Mindful compassion also teaches you to separate pain from identity. Pain is an experience. Identity is who you choose to become. People often merge the two. They think, I am broken, I am unlovable, I am not enough, I am damaged, I am weak. These beliefs are emotional scars that formed because the wound was never understood. Compassion untangles the truth. It reminds you that pain shaped you, but it did not define you. Pain influenced you, but it did not determine your worth. Pain challenged you, but it did not diminish your strength. You are not your wound. You are the awareness that holds the wound with gentleness. As you develop mindful compassion, your emotional capacity expands. Your heart feels bigger. Your mind feels calmer. Your reactions feel softer. Your presence feels warmer. Compassion changes how you see the world. People who once irritated you now appear as individuals carrying their own hidden struggles. People who were once difficult now seem wounded rather than malicious. People who were once aggressive now appear insecure rather than powerful. Compassion does not blind you. It reveals truth more clearly. It does not make you naive. It makes you wise. You begin to understand that all human behavior is rooted in unmet needs, unhealed wounds, or unexpressed emotions. This awareness softens judgment and strengthens emotional clarity. But mindful compassion must be balanced with boundaries. Compassion without boundary becomes self-sacrifice. Boundaries without compassion become emotional distance. Mindful compassion is the center point, the balance between openness and self-protection. Chapter 9, Integrated Awareness and the Mindful Self. Awareness becomes powerful when it stops living in pieces and finally comes together as one whole. Most people experience their inner world as scattered signals, thoughts pulling one way, emotions pulling another, habits running on autopilot. Integrated awareness and identity drifting between them all is the moment when these fragments, it is the shift, begin to align. From living unconsciously to living with deliberate presence. From reacting to responding. From confusion to centered clarity. Mindful mastery reaches its peak when awareness becomes integrated, not separate parts of you competing, but a unified inner system working in harmony. Integration begin with emotional honesty. You cannot align what you continue to avoid. You cannot heal. You cannot understand what you deny exists, what you refuse to name. Integrated awareness requires Permission. Permission to feel, permission to acknowledge, permission to understand. When you grant yourself this permission, your inner world shifts from chaos to coherence. Thoughts become clearer, emotions feel less overwhelming, behaviors become easier to control, choices feel more intentional, because you are no longer running from parts of yourself. You are listening to them. Integrated awareness is like a room where all your emotional voices finally sit together at the same table. The fearful voice is heard. The excited voice is heard. The hurt voice is heard. The one that often stays quiet, the wise inner voice, the hopeful voice is heard, finally has space to guide you. Each voice was trying to protect you in some way. Integration allows you to understand the intention behind each emotion before deciding how to act. This is what emotional intelligence looks like when it becomes fully mature. You stop viewing emotions as enemies. You stop treating thoughts as commands. You stop treating reactions as destiny. Instead, you see clearly, everything inside you is information. Every emotion is a messenger. Every reaction is a signal. Every tension is a memory rising. Every thought is a possibility, not a verdict. When awareness shifts into this integrated state, life becomes easier, not because problems vanish, but because you gain a calmer mind to face them. You learn to notice before reacting. You learn to pause before speaking. You learn to reflect before judging. You learn to breathe before resisting. Integrated awareness begins to color your whole life. Moments that once overwhelmed you now feel manageable. Situations that once triggered you now feel slower. Challenges that once crushed you now feel like opportunity to understand yourself more deeply. This is what emotional growth looks like from the inside. Everything begins to feel less urgent and more understandable. Another layer of integrated awareness is identity clarity. Identity becomes grounded not in roles, not in expectations, not in external validation, but in inner understanding. You stop asking, "What do others think of me?" and begin asking, "What feels most true to me?" Your center shift from outside to inside. Integrated awareness of disappointing people dissolves the fear because you no longer shape yourself to earn acceptance. You shape yourself to honor your truth. The fear of rejection loosens its grip because you realize you cannot lose what is meant for your authentic self. Integrated awareness gives you inner stability. This stability does not mean you feel calm all the time. It means you have built a secure inner foundation, one humble that emotions cannot break and stress cannot shake. Even when you bend, you do not break. Even when you struggle, you do not lose yourself. Even when you fall, you do not fall apart. This strength does not come from force, it comes from integration. Another powerful aspect of integrated awareness is emotional neutrality. Neutrality does not mean you are indifferent. It means you have the emotional space to see clearly before assigning meaning. When emotions arise, you observe them without attacking yourself. When thoughts appear, you notice them. When growth is no longer something you practice. Chapter 10. Living as the mindfully mastered self. There comes a moment in every inner journey. Mindful mastery reaches its highest expression. It becomes something you live. Not in meditation, not in journaling, not in emotional reflection, but in how you move through your days. Without forcing the process, you begin to realize that emotional intelligence is not an achievement. It is an ongoing relationship with your inner world. A relationship built with patience, trust, consistency, and deep internal awareness. This final chapter brings together everything you've learned: self-awareness, regulation, compassion, integration. Now these abilities must evolve into a lived experience that flows naturally through your thoughts, your choices, your relationships, and your presence. Living as the mindfully mastered self does not mean becoming perfect. It means becoming aligned. It means living from your center instead of your wounds. It means choosing clarity instead of chaos. It means responding with intention. Instead of reacting from old patterns, you begin to shape your life from the inside out. The first shift of a mastered self is emotional steadiness. Steadiness is not emotional suppression. It is the ability to feel deeply without losing your grounding. You no longer collapse under emotional waves. You surf them with calm consciousness. Anger may rise, but it does not hijack your behavior. Sadness may appear, but it does not drown your spirit. Fear may whisper, but it does not control your choices. Your emotional system becomes more spacious, more balanced, more resilient. This steadiness shows up in small moments: the quiet pause before speaking, the gentle breath before reacting, the soft awareness before interpreting anything personally. These micro-moments shape your entire life. Another sign of a mastered self is inner neutrality. Life will always bring unexpected challenges, but neutrality gives you the ability to observe before absorbing. Instead of saying, "This is happening to me," you begin saying, "This is happening, and I can decide how I show up." The neutrality is the emotional doorway to wisdom, because when you stop reacting instantly, you give your inner intelligence time to speak. Wisdom cannot be heard in a noisy mind. Neutrality quiets that noise. Another part of living the mastered self is emotional honesty. You no longer hide your truth to make others comfortable. You no longer shrink your needs to avoid conflict. You no longer silence your feeling to maintain false peace. You communicate with clarity and grounded emotion. You speak from your core, not from insecurity. Your honesty becomes more gentle, yet more powerful, more calm, yet more effective, more respectful, yet more authentic. The mastered self is not afraid of truth, because truth is freedom. Another transformation occurs in your relationships. You stop choosing people from emotional hunger. You begin choosing people from emotional alignment. You attract connections that feel safe, respectful, growth-focused, and internally balanced. You stop chasing validation. You start valuing reciprocity. You stop tolerating emotional chaos. You start seeking emotional clarity. Your boundaries become clearer, not as walls, but as rules for mutual respect. You no longer fear losing people who cannot meet you at your level of awareness. You understand that anything that leaves your life is making space for something more aligned. This is emotional maturity via spudifentauert in its highest form. Another part of living mindfully is presence in everyday life. You stop rushing through your days. You begin experiencing them fully. You notice how the morning air feels on your skin. You taste your food instead of swallowing unconsciously. You walk slower. You breathe deeper. You appreciate more. Your life, once blurry,